Hello and welcome. Welcome to Elemental Alchemy, a podcast for artists and creatives. I am your host, Sarah Rockwood, professional Renaissance woman and artistic embodiment coach. I am so glad you are here. Today, we're going to talk about some tough stuff. You know me. The glass is always half full for me. I am an eternal optimist. However, I am very comfortable with looking at hard things and calling hard things. And that is what we're going to talk about today. The journey of autoimmunity, having an autoimmune condition, and art making. Yeah. Let me start off by saying, and making this very clear, I am not a doctor. Every time I say that, I flash on the Simpsons episode where they go to Duff Gardens and Lisa gets too high and the guy at the park is like, give her these and these and these. And Aunt Patty or Selma goes like, thank you, doctor. And he goes, oh, I'm not a doctor. Every single time it goes through my head. Showing my age with referencing like season 3 of The Simpsons. But yeah, I am not a doctor. And this is not medical advice, right? I need to say that up top, that this is not medical advice. My intention with this episode is to share my personal experience with autoimmune conditions, highs and lows, in hopes that if you are dealing with an autoimmune condition, or you know someone who's dealing with an autoimmune condition, you feel less alone. And dare I say, even hopeful and empowered about your condition and how you live with it. Now I'm saying your condition. This is something else that I really want to be aware of my language in this episode, because I don't want to reinforce the identity component of this. If that's how if you include it in part of your identity, if you identify, I'm using the word identity too much. If for you that it is part of your identity, great, that's your choice. And if you feel empowered doing that, then go for it. For me, I like to use language that does not define myself as as someone who has fibromyalgia. I experience fibromyalgia symptoms. I try to just create that little bit of distance in my language that hopefully gives me an element of observation and hopefully control over control is sometimes a fallacy, but ownership, autonomy, that's the word, gives me an element of autonomy with the condition and with the symptoms. So you'll hear me, I'm sure, at some point in this episode, fumble with my language and correct myself. So let me put that out there. So covering that I'm not a doctor and I'm not a medical professional in any way, and this is not intended as medical advice, I do want to just kind of put a few details on the table about autoimmunity before we get into, I get into all the gory details of my life and whatnot, and what my thoughts are on all this stuff. So let's just define autoimmunity, autoimmune conditions. So autoimmune is roughly defined as a condition where the body's immune system mistakenly attacks and damages its own cells, tissues, and organs. There are over 80 recognized conditions affecting an estimated 2 million Canadians, just over 23 million Americans, and then millions more worldwide. And some of these conditions, I'm not going to list all 80, but just to give us a few here: multiple sclerosis, so MS, lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, psoriasis, fibromyalgia, just to put a few on the table. And common symptoms: chronic pain, fatigue, joint pain and inflammation, skin rashes, digestive issues, and the big one, well, they're all big ones, but brain fog. So I put a lot of time into planning out this episode. Hopefully it'll come across that way at the end. But I really was very diligent and specific about what parts of my life and health I wanted to share. So let me also say here at this point, there will be, let's give some content warnings. We're going to touch on childhood sexual assault and abuse. We're going to talk about domestic violence slightly. We're going to talk about medical trauma. And I struggled with not making this episode just a giant trauma dump of my life story. Because when I really looked into it, and I know a lot of people can relate to this, that like I have been ill for most of my life. For most of my life, I have been quite sick. And with invisible illnesses, like with things that you would not see if you looked at me. And like a lot of people with autoimmune, I'm very high functioning. Like I can, and good at masking. I'm good at masking. I'm sure there are a lot of people who would never have known that like, I'm in a recording session with a migraine that's taking 3 extra strength Advil every 2 hours to like get through my day. Like, we're good at masking. And because these are invisible conditions, when there's a chance to talk about it, we want to be seen. We want to be heard. And yeah, there is a part of me, there is an unhealed part of me that wants to like have my experience, every single nuance of my experience acknowledged publicly, And I mean, there are times and places for that. That's not what this venue is for, I think. I feel. I know. And I don't know if that actually serves me either to do a rehash of my entire life and put that out into the world. So I have really tried to pare this down and make it relevant as well to the art making, right? Because I wasn't always an artist. Yes, I was. Yes, we are. I think we kind of pop out with the artist bug in us, and it's whether or not it gets smushed by life or allowed to cocoon and pupate. Is that a word? Is that the word? I feel like that's the word. And blossom and metamorphosize. Yes, we're calling that a word. Metamorphosize into, the adult artists we are now. Okay, so with that being said, with all that groundwork information, let's get into it. So I'll start with just so these are the conditions that I have dealt with and experienced throughout my life. The big one for me is fibromyalgia. I'll get into when that started. Chronic fatigue, that's been a really big one. And Epstein-Barr. I'm not sure if that's one of the 80 recognized, but in some circles it is considered autoimmune. So Epstein-Barr, which is mononucleosis or glandular fever for the people in the UK listening to this. Okay, so where did this all start? And remember, I gave you a content warning. My troubles with my immune system began when I was very young. When I was about 2 or 3 years old, I started getting chronic UTIs, urinary tract infections. And those went on until I was about 7 or 8 years old. And I know now that those were a result of being molested as a child, right? And it took a while for all of the information around that time to like come to me. But the infections were so bad and they weren't resolving that I was interviewed by Child Protective Services at that time. I'm not sure what they're called. I'm just using that because we all know that term. I did have to have like pelvic exams and things when I was like 3 and 4 years old, 5 years old, like all through that time. So it's hard to talk about, but they wouldn't go away, and the investigations found nothing at that time, clearly. But the infections wouldn't go away. And so finally my pediatrician, when I was about 7, said, okay, well, we're just going to put her on high dose penicillin until they go. We're just going to shock it out of her system with penicillin. And they did that. But this is the 80s. So the microbiome, we had no idea what that was. I say I was a child, so I don't know why I expected myself to know what would have been good care for me at that time. That's another part of this, right? Like we get hypervigilant with ourselves. We become our own, a friend of mine refers to it as like our own contractors for our medical health. Like, they put me on the high dose penicillin. And it did clear the infections, but what it also did was completely eradicate my immune system and made me anaphylactic to penicillin. Yeah, so that was great. So I ended up almost failing grade 2 because I missed so much school. Because at that point I had no natural immunity. So I think I missed 1 out of 3 days for the entire year. That made sense. I just caught everything. And it just really set me up for anytime I got sick, I got like the worst you could possibly imagine sick. Like when I got chicken pox, I mean, my brother and sister were running around in the backyard, still in the pool and stuff. I had chicken pox on my eyeballs, like literally on my eyeballs, there were chicken pox. And I think I missed the end of school that year, like the last few weeks of school. I could basically just like lay face down on the floor. Like that was all. And it was just excruciating. And I still have some scars on my face and body from the sores, because it was just like, it was disgusting. I still remember it was disgusting. I looked to the side one day and I'm like, what is that on my eyeball? There's a giant fucking chicken pox on my eyeball. So yeah, and like, I knew I was picking up every cold and every virus. Like I always knew I was getting everything. And I would have, and this is a story for another time, but I did have some very emotionally difficult time periods in my preteens. And it just would knock me out. Like, when you get sad, you can still kind of do things, but I would get sad and like my whole body would shut down. And I would just be like in my room, just unable to really do anything except like maybe listen to some musicals or like draw. Like I couldn't do things. And then it was in 11th grade, we were studying Shakespeare. Now, I've said this before. I went to an arts high school. I majored in acting at high school. And so we were doing Shakespeare. And we were being taught it like it was method acting. Like that's the closest I can describe. So when we were doing the Shakespeare, we were doing the Shakespeare. And I was playing Lady Anne from Richard III in that scene. if you know the play, you know the scene. They give that scene to everybody. And I was going into the rehearsal, and the director, who was the teacher, came up to me, and she was like, "Now I hear you get sick for every show." And I was like, "What? What are you talking about?" She's like, "Everybody's told me that every time you guys do a play," because we were the same class from grade 9 all the way through. So you become like a repertory company where everybody's doing all sorts of different parts, and you become a little family, as much as a little group of teenagers can become a family. And she's like, "And everyone says you get sick every single show." And I was like, "What?" And it was one of the first moments, or perhaps the first moment, where I was like, "Oh," and I had to sit with it and go, I do get sick for every show. Like, it suddenly hit me. I'm like, yeah, when we did Monty Python, I got bronchial asthma and had to, take the week off school. And when we did this show, I got that illness. And whenever the stress, and if there was a March break, every time there was a March break, and like the day after March break started, I would get ill. Like, it was like, I would hit the wall and then just crash. But I kept doing the shows. I mean, I would do the show, I would be off sick all day from school, and then come in and do the show. Like, that is how it went. And I was so fucking driven around acting that nobody questioned, like, no one in my family questioned it, right? And then once I learned how to drive, I just took over the management of my life. Like, this is that high functioning component that I have seen in so many women I should say, autoimmune is more prevalent among women than men. And every woman I've met that has an autoimmune condition is like the fucking chief operation officer for everybody in their life, and they get everything done. You know this. I can feel you nodding. I can feel you listening to this and nodding along, being like, "That's right. I got this done. I got this done." And if we add on top of that firstborn daughter, I mean, come on. Like, we're just running and taking care of everybody. I mean, I was parentalized at a very young age, 3-4 years old. I was helping my mom with the daycare that she had in our house, right? Like, super high functioning. So yes, when this teacher says to me, "You're not getting sick for this show," and I'm like, well, that helped. That get confident, stupid. Again, Simpsons. Yeah, I'm like, but I was able to think about it with some objectivity for the first time. Not that I really knew what to do with that information. Because again, this is the 90s, and I didn't have a lot of I didn't have a lot of care in my family home. As I said, learned to drive, took over my own life management, didn't look back. So it didn't really stick as something I needed to manage my health in that way. And then in OAC, so 5th year of high school, at the time it was called OAC, I was diagnosed with mono for the first time. I think I probably got it much younger. They say it's one of those things that everybody in the population is exposed to when they're young. Like cold sores, we get exposed to them by well-meaning adults, and we're little, and it's whether or not you can fight it off. But yeah, I got diagnosed with the mono, and I kept going. I was the teacher's assistant for the vocal program, senior class, I think, at that point. And they were in the vocal class every other day. So I went to school every other day. The day off, I would just sit at home and do my homework and watch country music videos all day. That's why I can write country songs. Because in the 90s, I just sat there going okay, Jody Messina, I see you. Okay, Faith Hill, I see you. Just internalizing their songwriting. Yeah, but I didn't officially take any time off with the school. I still was one of the leads in the school musical. And I did all of my theater school auditions. I found out the day before I auditioned for I'm not going to say which university, but the day I auditioned for one of the universities here in Toronto, and I drove myself to the audition. I mean, I was sick as a dog, and I was like, well, I'm going to be a fucking actor. Like, believe it or not, I have mellowed, guys. I have mellowed. 45-year-old Sarah is so much more chill than 18-year-old Sarah. So you can imagine 18-year-old Sarah full of anxiety, fighting her own need to just lie down and sleep every single minute. I was high strung and very vocal. Yeah, so everything was at an 11 in my body all the time. But the art, the acting, was the outlet. Had I not had that space where I could express, where I could feel the fullness of myself, I shudder to think how that time period would have gone, because I did not at the time have the intellectual or spiritual understanding of how depleted I was and how much of a lifeline acting was. No, I say that, but I did. Everything was for the theater. Like, that was what was keeping me going, was just the next step. You're getting there, Sarah. You're getting there, Sarah. And then being able to throw myself into the work, I do believe saved me. It's interesting. Sometimes my mom, when she's thinking about it, will go, "Oh, I wish we never put you in theater. Oh, it was too hard on you." And I'm like, that's the reason I'm alive, girl. Like, I needed that place where I felt at home, where the people around me didn't look at me like I was crazy. No, sometimes they did, because, as I say, had no chill, very opinionated, hanging on to life by a thread. So yeah, they did experience the full brunt of my I don't even know what you'd call it. Not anger, exacting standards, right? Like, I was holding myself to such a high standard, and I wanted everybody to make and it's that tight grip, because if I fucking relaxed, everything was going to fall apart. I can feel you nodding. I can feel this hitting you. And there is a part of us, was a part of me, and I think it's probably the same, that still has a bit of that now. Right? I'm learning to allow myself to, like, it's a process. Yeah. There were two other things that really knocked my health back. In the summer between second and third year of college, and I was there for musical theater performance, I contracted a parasite. At least that's what they've got to with it. Like, this was the closest thing to a diagnosis that I could get in, like, 2000, the year 2000. And I'm not going to sing the song again. I did that on another episode, and I'm not going to do it again. I contracted this parasite on the worst family vacation of all time in Mexico, where everybody got sick and everybody fought. So again, that tension, that firstborn daughter, got to fix everything. And I lost about 30 pounds, 25, 30 pounds in the space of like a month to 6 weeks. Like, I could not keep food in my body. I could not keep nutrition on my bones. And I was in college, so I wasn't taking particularly good care of myself to begin with. And what compounded the weird mental fuckery of that whole time period, because I literally felt like I was dying and nobody was helping me. I mean, I would have these attacks where I would just go sheet white and get freezing cold. And I remember once I turned to my roommate and I was like, can I borrow your sweater? And he was like, what the fuck? Like, I just went like life left my body in that moment. And the real thing, I lost so much weight and suddenly everybody was treating me better. Yeah, it still hurts. It still hurts that there was one teacher in particular, not going to say their name because I think they still work there. And they treated me in second year so badly to the point where other students were like, what happened there? And I'm like, I have no idea. Just treated me so badly. Very dismissive. If there's a line of us that are all doing the same thing, I would get ignored. It was really strange. And then one day after I'm in the throes of my illness, I've lost all this weight, and they came running up to me and they said, Sarah. And I was scared because I'm like, this person always goes out of their way to tear me down. So I'm like, uh-huh. They go, oh, the other day I saw this woman walking through the courtyard and I thought to myself, that looks like a skinny Sarah. And you know what? It was you. And then they turned around and ran off. And I'm sure at the time I was like, oh, thank you. And from that moment on, that teacher treated me like fucking gold, to the point where they told me to watch out for the other girls, because the other girls are going to come for you now because you're so beautiful. And start calling me Baby Jane. Watch out, Baby Jane. Watch out, Baby Jane. These girls are going to... I got injured in a rehearsal, and they came up to me and they were like, you got to watch out for these girls, Baby Jane. They're after you. I'm like, what the fuck is what is happening? I feel like I'm dying, and suddenly my value is improved. It just... So how do you go to people for help in that situation, right? How do you get accommodations made for your education? How do you take time off? I should have taken the year off and done, I should have deferred a year. I was that sick. And I had no way of coping with what was happening to me. My family didn't really get it because I was away at school, so they didn't really care. And literally once I left for college, I had no bedroom at my parents' house. In the summertime, I'd come home and I could sleep wherever there was a spare room. Oh, we put a bunch of storage in here, but you can sleep in here for the summer. I'm like, okay, I guess I don't live here anymore. It was just, it was really very isolating and very confusing. Very confusing. And then right after college, I was in a car accident. I had a massive head-on collision. And that completely changed my life. That was the full 180. And that was when the fibromyalgia symptoms became my life. I'll give you the rundown of my injuries. There are lots of funny stories. Honestly, there are funny moments that came out of the car accident, but it's a long tale. I did do a whole thing about it on my Patreon, if you're interested in hearing the entire journey. But I was trapped in the car for 90 minutes. I had whiplash, bad whiplash, a minor brain injury. My right rotator cuff was torn. My right wrist was sprained. My left elbow was sprained. I bruised the valve between my stomach and my esophagus, which destroyed my voice from the stomach acid coming up. The ligaments down the left side of my back were all torn. I don't remember the specific terms, but torn and sprained. I had cuts and bruises down my legs, and then my right ankle was, I had a big, deep cut on my right knee that was, it was gross. It was so gross. We had to treat it like a burn, and there were like wet bandages I had to put on. Oh, it was so gross. And then my right ankle was crushed, and it took 2 plates and 16 screws to put my ankle back together again. And then a year later, I had to have all the hardware taken out because the screws started to like come through the skin. Yeah, you could like look at my ankle and be like, is that a Phillips? Like, it was just, oh, it was so gross. But I my soft tissue injuries to my upper body were so bad that I spent about 8 months to a year ish in a wheelchair in the house. And I had to sleep on like a motorized hospital bed, and like, yeah, for about the first year after the accident, I maybe slept 2 to 3 hours a night. 1 from the pain, and 2 from like just the fucking PTSD of it all, and the anxiety, and the, oh my God, my life is over because I'm like 21 and everybody I know has gone off to do shows and tours and all this, and I'm peeing in a fucking grown-up potty beside my bed because I can't get to the bathroom on my own. It was a dark time. It was a really dark time, and I had no boundaries, right? Like, I could not enforce any boundaries. And this is the thing with fibromyalgia. I know this is where it like kicked in, that like in the medical community, this is what I've been told, that the acronym they use is FMA. And they jokingly say fucking massive anger. That a big component for a lot of people with fibromyalgia is a very internalized anger that is not expressed. And that entire process of recovering from that car accident was just like so angering. I couldn't do anything about fucking anything, right? Like, I was at the mercy of other people's whims, really. I mean, my God. And my dad's mental health was like beginning to fall apart at that point. And one of our friends, her mother died about a month or so after my car accident, and we all went to the funeral, or to the wake, and my dad was like, again, his mental health was starting to slip. And he was trying to get me through the front door in my wheelchair. And it was jamming up on the door. And the like, I don't know what they're called. The man who was running the funeral home was trying to help him and was like, sir, if you just back up, we can open the door. You know, they're fantastic at those places. They do amazing, such a hard job. And they do a really good job. Most funeral homes I've been to, the people have been fantastic. Which is a weird thing to say, but it's true. And he just kept trying to ram me through the door. And I'm like, Dad, can you just... And he wasn't listening. They eventually got me in the door. And without a word, my father just booked me in my wheelchair, like through the people, through the crowds, up the chapel area, right up to the coffin, open casket, right up to the coffin, and then just left me there. Was like, here you go, and left me there. And I'm like, I can't wheel myself around in this chair, and I'm now 2 feet away from and having enough decorum is the only word I can find here, is that I have enough decorum that I am not going to make this moment about me, right? Like, I'm not going to start freaking out at the coffin of like, why did you leave me here? Why did you help? Like, I'm not going to do that, even though internally I am screaming like, where is my mom? Where is like anybody? Like, why have I been left alone here? Like, and And eventually somebody came and like wheeled me away. But yeah, those moments where it's just like you feel like you can't do anything. And then the reality is that you can't do anything because you are at the mercy of the people around you. God, I mean, that is, it's terrifying. And I look back on it and I'm like, well, no wonder you weren't sleeping, girl. Like, no wonder you were in agony all the time. I mean, I was like, again, I'm going to go back to The Simpsons. The one where Marge, Sarah, stop. The one where Marge is like afraid of getting on a plane and Lisa's like, Dad, I think we should get her to like a therapist. And he's like, no, she's fine. He's like, really? And they pan, he's like, she's just watching TV. And then you look through and she's like in like a fucking chair pose with no couch under her, just like watching the TV. Yeah, that's where I was at. But in the mix of that, I did have enough wherewithal to go, hang on, Sarah. You don't have a creative outlet anymore. You don't. I mean, as I said earlier, acting kept me alive through the difficulty of my health in my high school years. And again, in college, like, I mean, I love the theater. Like, it was just that it kept me going. Okay, why didn't I take the year off when I was deathly ill? Because I wanted so badly to be in my art. So I find myself in this wheelchair and with these injuries, and I'm going, okay, you don't have a creative outlet. You better fucking find one. And I don't know why, guys, but the first thing that popped into my head was songwriting. You can do that from this position. You can do that from here. So I made my mom take me to Chapters, the bookstore, big bookstore here. Had her wheel me into the music section. I grabbed Songwriting for Dummies or Songwriting for Idiots, whatever the book was at that, at that time. Grabbed that book because they were very popular in the 2000s. And I had a few of them and they were surprisingly good books. Later on, I bought the Complete Idiot's Guide to Fibromyalgia and it helped me a lot. So I get the book, I go home, I read it. I read a few chapters. I didn't finish the book. And I was like, okay, I can do this. And I started writing songs. And they weren't very good, but it helped. It really helped. And when I was rebuilding my voice, because again, that bruising of the valve fried my voice. So I'm rebuilding my voice, and that was when my teacher at the time connected me with a co-writer in my hometown, and it just moved from there. Like, I had done the work when I was injured, when I was like recovering, when I was at my lowest. I was like, no, I will have a future. I will have art. No. And I made it happen. And I made it happen. And then the universe aligned for that. Then unfortunately, at that point, I met my ex. And my father's mental health continued to decline. And I continued to decline. And I think you'll know what I mean when I say I felt so invisible. I felt like no one was seeing me. I mean, I would go to doctors. I would do the research. I would find, okay, who's the expert here? Who's the expert there? Go and try to get help. And my ex would say, oh, you just want to go and prove yourself right. That's why you go see all these doctors. You can prove that you know more than them. I'm like, no, I go to these fucking doctors because I want to feel better. It's not my fault if they don't know the latest research. Like, I have a computer, so I'm going to fucking, as my friend says, be the personal contractor of my own health and figure this out. And I did meet with one psychologist. She was a medical doctor. It was also a trained psychologist. And I was like, and training to be a functional medicine specialist. So I'm like, okay, this woman, she's got to know what's going on. And I remember within a few appointments, she was like, but are you ready to release your victimhood? Are you ready to release your victim mindset? And I was like, are you ready to fight me bare knuckle? Like, just like, are you ready to get fucked? Like, I was just so enraged. I'm like, how dare you? We did not continue working together much longer after that. I was just like, how dare you think that that's what people with these conditions are doing? I can't think of a single person I have met with autoimmune conditions or symptoms that wouldn't trade it all for being healthy. They might be comfortable in some of the negative aspects of the condition, but that's because they've had to adapt to it. And if given the opportunity, if given care, if they were seen and held as full people who are experiencing horrible shit, they would embrace the care and the change. The flames out the sides of my head when this woman said, "Are you ready to release your victimhood?" Yeah, we didn't choose this. We don't choose to experience these things. And quite honestly, if a huge component of these autoimmune conditions is unresolved emotions, I mean, Gabor Mate talks about that. I'm not going to get into his research because I don't know enough about it, but in generalizing, like, you know, that women take on the emotional burdens of life and of other people's lives so much more, then how the fuck are you helping me by telling me it's my fault? Like, how is that helpful? How is that care? How is that? And when I look back at the work I was creating at that time, the songs I was writing, I was like screaming to be seen. It's so funny that people in my life, like I'm gonna say people, family, it's like, well, we didn't know any of this was going on. And I'm like, you never listened. You never listened. I was like writing it out verbatim, what was happening to me, explicitly. Verbatim's not the right word. I was being explicit in my song lyrics. I wrote a song at that time in 2013 called "Change My Mind," and the verse is, "I don't feel myself, this woman in the mirror. I don't know her. My heart aches, my legs feel weak. Oh, baby, I could drop to my knees in this sea of disease, tearing me down." Nobody asked me if I was all right. Nobody. Just like, "Oh, what a great song." I'm like, are you kidding me? You know? It's another one I did called "The Shaking." And that one, I'm like, how did anyone hear that and not go, "Are you okay?" Like, the bridge is, "I bite the air that meets my teeth. Soft space pushes in around me. I'm losing my grip on reality. I'm so hungry, someone feed me, please." Nothing. So it's that thing where, like, the art, it's all in the art is saving me, but also making me feel, there's a sense of loneliness there because I'm wanting desperately to connect with people. I'm trying as much as I can, right? You know, I still don't feel like I can say, "Hey, I'm going through really bad things and I would really love you to just hold space for me or see me or help me." I can't quite find that, but I can put it in the song. But I can't control if people are taking that in. So it's that thing of, like, there is catharsis because the song is helping, but it's also creating distance. Yeah. In the book series that I was writing at that time, my Phoenix series, the lead character in that, who I was kind of like basing on myself a little bit, like, you know, wish fulfillment, all that kind of stuff. The lead character in that, she discovers she's not whole. She finds the parts of herself to make her whole, and then learns that she has the ability and the desire and has spent her forgotten years healing other people. Like, the character's whole thing is just wanting to alleviate the pain of others as much as she can. Yeah, and I read those books back and I'm like, girl, you know, could you make it more obvious? This idea of like the two parts of myself, of like the sassy girl is like, you know, why don't you get fucked, Miss Psychologist, who tells me to let go of my victimhood. And also, I just want to help people as much as I can. It's those almost to my own, not almost, to our own detriment. Sometimes, because we know how hard it is, we wish so badly to alleviate the pain and suffering of others, you know, to our own detriment, because we know how bad it feels, right? Like, I think it's the empathy component which makes us amazing artists, right? It's a real interesting cosmic soup. And this is why boundaries are so important, right? Like, and the protection of our own energy and the prioritization of our own art. You know, I have a little circle diagram that I think of with this, that it's like when our, because we want to help everyone, but we want that to be, if not a reciprocal arrangement, at least one that is filled with respect, at least one in which we are seen. Don't just take my help. Let it be a thing that connects us. You know what I mean? Like, I don't just want to help you and then you get to go off on your life. Like, let me help you, let me be with you, and then let our lives join, let it bring us closer together. And I think that's, for me, that was a lot of it. Just like that firstborn daughter quest of like, okay, if I fix everything, if I get everything okay, then it'll be my turn, right? Then everybody can help me. And I can stop feeling like I'm in agony. I can, you know, these headaches, this body pain, these fucking rashes, like the digestive issues, that I'll have time to deal with that, right? Because you guys are going to help me. I think that's for a lot of women, right? Like, okay, I'll get the kids to school, you know, I'll help my husband do this and that, and then, you know, I'll get to have a day to myself, or I'll get to do this because then he'll be able to. And does it happen? You know, and then when it doesn't happen, this is my little cycle that I've kind of identified for myself, that when I feel like my boundaries are being violated, or I feel like my energy is not being appreciated, and I don't speak up, I get angry. And that anger becomes internalized. And then I start to feel sick. And then I find myself in a place where I don't have the energy to maintain my boundaries. So my boundaries get violated again. And then it gets me angry. And then I start to feel sick. And it's this circular pattern that I found myself in, where it was like, well, that's really, why did I stay in the relationship I stayed in for so long? Because I never had the fucking energy to get out of it until it was like a full-on crisis. I mean, when I left him, my health was in the toilet. Like, my hair was coming out in chunks. like chunks, clumps, like handfuls. My skin looked awful. I was just in pain all the time. I couldn't tolerate hot or cold. My anxiety was through the roof. I was getting these stomach cramps that was like, they would double me over, and my stomach was so distended and bloated. I was just dreading the day when somebody asked me when I was due. Like, I looked visibly pregnant, like, all the time. And I remember once I stopped and I looked in the mirror. I had a full-length mirror in my bedroom, and I think I was naked. Yeah, I was probably naked. It was in my bedroom. And I looked in the mirror at myself and I went, how is he not seeing this? Like, how is he not seeing how, not that my body isn't beautiful, but that there are clearly some medical things going on with me? Like, how does he not see this? And the answer is, he did see it. He just didn't give a fuck. It was part of his plan. Like, he didn't give a fuck. And when that penny dropped of like, oh shit, like, that's when it became clear that, like, I don't want to live a life where defending myself is part of the program. Like, I don't want to be in a situation. I don't want to be in a paradigm where, like, my boundaries get violated. I get angry. Then I feel sick, so I can't defend myself. Then I'm going to get my boundaries violated, and round in a circle. No. And I know that situation was the cause of so many, if not all of my health issues, was because within a couple months of leaving, the pain had almost disappeared. The bloating, the digestive issues, the stomach cramps. Oh God. I remember we were driving to see where my father's ashes had been interred. And I'm laughing because in retrospect, I'm like, how did you not just like deck that guy? Yeah, there's still a lot of anger in me, guys. We were driving there and the traffic was bad, and he was just just picking at me and yelling at me the whole way to see my father's grave. This guy's going off. And my stomach was I was in so much agony. I was just like doubled over in my seat, but like I couldn't show him because then it'd be like, what's wrong with you? Do you need to go to the hospital? Like that kind of thing. And I was just like, I can't keep doing this. Like it hurt so much. And then we get to the cemetery and he's totally fine. And it's so great. And so caring and loving with my whole family. Then we get back in the car to drive back to the house and he's like picking at me again. My stomach goes off again. Then we get to the house. He's fine again. Back in the car. And I was like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, what am I doing? Yeah. And getting away, the pain levels did dissipate very quickly. My nervous system, I'm still working on. I'm still healing. I will say that and God bless good therapy, guys. God bless good therapy. Because when I first met with my therapist, I was very much ready to never write a song again. And never sing again. I was just like, no, that was all wrapped up in him. And she really, from like the first session, was like, okay, so I'm going to need you to go write a song. And I was like, blah, blah. I don't think so. She's like, no, you do. And I was like, I don't think so. No, you should. And she, God bless her, kept chipping away at it. But it took months before I could. It took months. I mean, I would put it in my schedule. I would give myself time, like a creative hour where it was like, okay, you're just gonna, for this hour, even if you just lie on the carpet and go, like, even if you just do that for a literal hour, it counts. And eventually I think it was on my birthday the following year. So like 6 months later, I finally wrote a song, and I bawled my eyes out while I wrote it. And there were many times where I was like, you could just stop. And I was like, fuck you, you're not stopping. Like the internal dialogues I have. And I pushed myself through that moment, and I felt better, and I started to sleep better after that happened. And I think, there are 5 components that I focus my energy on, focus my attention on when it comes to balancing my life within the experience of, or to mitigate the experience of, autoimmune symptoms. And as I say, I am not a doctor, right? That has become very clear during this episode, Sarah. You don't need to remind us. But I offer these 5 things to you as something to think about, something to ponder. And they are sleep, movement, water, boundaries, and art. Where am I with those things? So sleep, I am still working on this. I use an Aura ring, not sponsored, but I do think it's cool, to track my sleep. And when I first started tracking it, like a year and a half ago, I was getting like maybe 2 years ago. No, Sarah, it doesn't matter. Anyway, a long time ago, a while back, when I first started tracking my sleep, I was getting maybe 15 minutes of deep sleep a night. And I had already been doing a lot of work on my nervous system at that point. So you can imagine what state I was in, health-wise, when I was in that relationship. And now I'm up to like, on average, like an hour and 15 minutes a night. Good night, I can get to 2 hours of deep sleep. And the difference is staggering in my mental clarity, in that brain fog. I mean, it's funny. A friend of mine said, who I've known a really long time, and she listened to the podcast, she's like, you just sound so intelligent now. And I was like, yeah, I can think again. Thank you. And also, yeah, now I can think. My brain, I think entirely differently now, which is wonderful. But it's giving ourselves permission to prioritize our rest. And for me, a part of that is I have actually put in my schedule, it doesn't happen every day, but I am endeavoring to make this happen every day, is that in the afternoon, I give myself like constructive rest time where I lay down on my bed and read. And it's, it can be stuff that I'm working on, not stuff I'm working on, to fill my well. So what things do I want to research? What things interest me? I give myself 30 to 45 minutes of I'm just going to read. That is the job. That is the task right now. And I've found it really does help me sleep at night, that I've been giving my body a chance to relax earlier in the day. And the other thing is, if you're like me, and you might be because you're listening to this, if I spend too much of my day giving to others, like if I'm, which sounds weird, but if I have given, let me rephrase, if I have spent my day giving to the point of depletion, if I've allowed myself to be depleted by my day, I find I end up staying up later because it's like I want to claim my time back. And so it's like, no, I'm going to watch 2 more YouTube videos. And oh yeah, that YouTube's 40 minutes. I'll watch all of it. I don't care. And then I will read my book as well. And I will do my Wordle and my Sudoku. I just, I got back into Wordle. I don't know why. Actually, I do know why. It helps me focus my brain and calm down. But yeah, if I have allowed my day to deplete my energy, or if I felt like my boundaries have been a bit violated and I've got a little bit of unresolved anger in me, I claw that back at night. And the only person I'm fucking over in that place is myself. So what can I do during the day to make me feel like my day was whole? That's what I want to focus on, so that the night can be a relaxation, that it can be an early bedtime, so that tomorrow's Sarah gets to reap the benefits. And movement, it's finding the things that bring you joy. When you are at your most healthy, your most vibrant, what brings you joy? How does that make you, how does that give you a connection to you? Finding movement, blah, blah, blah. Finding movement that brings you into connection with your body and allows you time to revel in the marvelousness of your body. Because even when we have these conditions, they change, right? They're not all the time. There are things to be grateful of within our frame, within our organism, So those movements that bring you joy, how can you bring them into your day-to-day life, your week-to-week life? So knowing what those are, and then also having like a little list of things that you can do when you do feel depleted, when you are experiencing symptoms. Just having a list, whether that's, walking through the backyard or gentle stretching as opposed to like intense yoga, or whatever it is, whatever modifications need to happen. Having a list of those things for myself ahead of time makes it much easier to take care of myself. Like there are things like, I got a knockoff Theragun thing. I know if I do some stretches on the hard days, if I do some stretches and hit that guy all over me, I feel better. So I keep it in a spot that's like easy to access. It's little thing. It's that whole thing where like they used to tell us, oh, put your clothes out the night before for your day the next day. And we all went, that's, that can't possibly work. It does work. It works. So give yourself permission to do those things, to take care of yourself in that way. And body work is so good. Massage, osteopathy. I used to do chiropractic. Now I'm like all about the osteo, which is nice because I feel like with the chiropractic care, and this is my personal experience, no disparagement here. I craved the like hard adjustment. I craved the like painful trigger point work, and it like satisfied that sort of masochistic thing in my brain of like, yeah, it should be hard. And now with osteopathy, it's really interesting. Not the battle, the conversation, let's call it the conversation that goes on within me in those treatments where my body is like, oh, thank you, girl. Oh, this is amazing. And my mind is like, well, if she tucked that a little harder, it would probably crack, right? And I have to like mediate. And I'm like, no, we're good. We can relax and ease into this. Water. And this goes into the movement, right? Like drinking enough water helps with everything. And yes, you will pee more. You will. But guess what? We're supposed to pee more than I think we pee right now. Like, let's just put it out there. I mean, I drink a lot of water, and I mean water. Like, yes, I have smoothies and teas and coffees as well, but like, I probably drink 2 liters or more of just water a day. And yeah, I pee every hour. Okay, what's the big deal? And I know people have made fun of me for it. People who are dehydrated. You know how good your skin looks when you drink tons of water? Like, it's just, but again, you have to do what's right for you. I would just suggest drink more water than you are right now and see what happens. And make it fun. I mean, yeah, you can put lemon juice and all that stuff in it. Me personally, it's the vessel that that makes it fun. Like I have several giant cups. Like I've got the Starbucks cup with all the spikies on it. Oh, I love those. And then I have a knockoff Stanley cup that I refer to as my bucket. And when I go around to my sisters and they're like, would you like a glass of water? I'm like, no, I brought my bucket. And I drink that bucket, whatever. I could also, fight off a small army with the, stainless steel weight of it all. But whatever it is that you fucking like, do that. Like, we're in the now. Do us now. Do you now. You want to drink out of a sippy cup? Drink out of a fucking sippy cup. Like I don't know why I went with sippy cup. If you want one of those gigantic Stanleys that's like a bright neon green with a personalized, bedazzled your name on the side, then bloody well do it. And send me a picture because I want to see it and I want to celebrate it. Like, do you. Which leads me to boundaries. Boundaries. So a good therapist, someone you connect with, I think is paramount in this area. And there are lots of different options and price points. So you find what works for you in your life, and please do that. And don't be afraid to change if you don't like the person. Have a discussion about that, and then go find someone you do like. In my 20s, when I was trying to find a therapist, I went and had consultations with at least two. I was like, well, I'm talking to a lot of people. Like, it's an important relationship. So that is the first component there. Because there is an unlearning around declaring our needs. Because at a certain... I hope you haven't had to deal with this, but there are times where it becomes, does she need that again? Oh, she's sick again. And it makes us be quiet. It makes us mask. So, boundaries. And I've heard it described that like boundaries, and this was helpful for me, this definition, and I can't remember where I had heard it. I'm very sorry about that. That boundaries are your values in action. Your values in action. And for me, I got to a place where I was like, that my boundaries were not about keeping me safe from other people. They were about protecting my energy, or maintaining, that's a better word, maintaining my energy so I can live the life that I want to live, the life that is in line with my values. And when I stopped looking at boundaries as a reaction to someone's negative behavior or a way to control someone else's negative behavior, I became far more comfortable with them, with declaring them and with holding them. That's the next thing, right? Like, you can state your boundary when you don't have to state it unless it comes up, right? Like, you could, if people aren't fucking with your boundaries, you don't need to be like, I have a boundary, and everyone's like, no one was talking about that. You can declare them as necessary and enforce them as necessary. And that's the thing. When, I had a moment not too long ago where a boundary that I had established was tested. And I paused. There was a moment where I was like, I should just let this go. And then the bigger part of me went, no, you shouldn't. No, you shouldn't. And I restated my boundary. And it made everybody uncomfortable, but that's on them, right? I'm not responsible for how they feel. Oh God, that's like an episode unto itself. Like, you are not responsible for how other people feel. You're not. Which brings me to art. And it's finding ways to touch base with your art every single day. To touch base with the part of your soul that is art, that is an artist. And recognizing that it can be different. If you are a dancer, let's say, you don't have to dance, like physically dance every single day to still be in touch with dance. You know, you can read a book about dance. You can listen to a podcast about dance. You could watch dance and be watching it with that artistic eye, that objective eye, and you are practicing your dance. It's the same thing with singing. You can have music on passively, or you can listen to music and examine the music. And that you could just do lying down on your bed with earbuds in. So it's about finding the not obvious ways in which you can connect with your artistic self when you're in flare, right? When you're experiencing symptoms. Have those ways, and even journaling. And if you can't hold a pen, and I understand there have been times where holding a pen for me was painful. Voice notes. You got a phone, you know? Hopefully you have a phone, or you have a computer or something, and speak into it. Nobody has to hear it. And then when you're feeling good, listen back to it. Listen back to it. Connect with that person. And think about how, whatever that person was talking about at that time, that version of you, how can you support them now in this moment? So that if and or when the symptoms flare up again, you can support yourself even more. But ultimately, the thing to remember is that this too shall pass. We are ever changing. Literally, I mean, in the hour that I've been recording this, I have changed physiologically, right? I mean, I've changed. And as my friend pointed out, I sound far more intelligent now than I did a few years ago. I have changed again, you know. It will pass. It will change. It will morph. It will get better. The more you are in touch with yourself, the more you give yourself permission to be yourself, the better things get. The better things get. I have faith in that. I really do. Yeah. This too shall pass. So that is our episode for today. I have faith that it's reaching the people it needs to reach. And I'm here if you want to commiserate or discuss or have any questions around this. I am here, mail@sarahrockwood.com, mail. And I will put a link in the description to the companion workbook, sort of journal prompts that I've put together for this episode around sleep, movement, water, boundaries, art. And that will be available in my Etsy shop. Yeah, there's a little Etsy store now. Rockwood Alchemy Etsy store. So that'll be over there if you would like some more support and exploration around autoimmune symptoms and conditions and your art making. Again, not a doctor. Not a doctor, just a woman with a lot of experience who has collated all the questions I've asked myself into one spot in hopes that they will help you support yourself and explore what it means to live with these symptoms and conditions and still make fantastic motherfucking art. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for listening, and I will talk to you later. Bye.